Okay, hello everybody. I think we are starting, getting this room going. I see a lot of people starting to stream in. We've got almost 200 people registered to participate. I see people starting to come in now into the room. I see Dennis, Christopher, Randy, Steven, David, Roberto, Kenny, Adam, Dennis, Lewis, Tom, Jacqueline, Robin, Ken, Paul, Lewis. Just I could read through all the names, but we welcome every single person to this Interstellar webinar and dissection, live dissection, which we don't normally do. While you guys are getting settled in and everybody's coming in and the latecomers are showing up, I'll just tell a quick little story. So it's a funny story. It's about this Interstellar thing. So a few weeks ago, I get an email from one of these video streaming services I use, and it says, "Hey, Interstellar is available for rental." So I say, "Oh, cool! I didn't see it in the theater. Let me go check it out." And this was a Sunday. So for those of you who don't know, I've got 5 children, and you really can't sit down and watch a 2-hour, 40-minute movie on a Sunday. Certainly not without interruption. But I do it anyway. And I'm watching 20 minutes of it here and 30 minutes of it there. And then my wife's like, "What are you doing in there?" And I'm like, "No, I got something very important I got to do, and I got to get done." She had no idea I was just sitting there watching a movie. And so finally, through the course of the day, I get through the movie. And I hit Howard up, and I'm like, "Hey, Howard, why don't we do a live dissection on this movie Interstellar? I just watched it, and I think it'd be pretty cool. I think it follows the real writing process all the way through." He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So now I've got the rental for 2 days. That's the way those rentals work. You get it for 2 or 3 days through Amazon. So now I've got like another day and a half. I've got to get through the dissection, which is a pretty big job in itself. I go through it very carefully. I pay attention to every single line of dialogue. I really look at all the scenes. I think about it. I put it into the software. So now I'm literally over the next like 2 days, I'm going through the movie in bits and pieces. And like I finished that dissection, I had 2 hours left of the rental. And like a few days later, I get an email saying we've refunded. We've got something about a refund from Amazon. So I'm like, "What is that? I didn't purchase anything from Amazon or request a refund." So I go into the email and it says, "We apologize for all the playback problems you had watching the movie Interstellar. We've therefore given you a refund of the $4 and change that you paid for the movies." Great, free movie. So now look, I'm not saying people should go and take advantage of this by gaming the system and watching movies on Amazon bits and pieces so that you can get it for free, but it may actually work. So anyway, thank you for everybody for participating today. There are now 71 people in the room joining us today. What we're going to do today is a little different. We're going to do a live dissection of the movie Interstellar. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Mitchell German. I'm the creator of the Real Writing and the Software Plot Control and the Mega Course. And what we're going to do today, normally we do these things, is we do these live webinars and we help individuals like yourself work on your screenplays. Today we're not doing that. Maybe at this time at the end we may try and help 1 or 2 of you, but that's really not the goal today. The goal today is to discuss and dissect the movie Interstellar. So along with me today, a couple important things. First of all, we're using this very cool webinar technology called Webinar Jam, actually created by my old NYU Film School roommate, Andy Jenkins. The only thing one needs to know about this software is that there is a delay. There's roughly a 30-second delay. So what you see me talking right now actually took place 30 seconds ago in the past. For you, as I'm saying it, it's the present, but when you see it, it's going to be 30 seconds ago. So that's something to be aware of. But when you give us a text or a chat through the chat roll on your little bar there, that's instant. So you can message us instantly, but you wouldn't see our response potentially for up to 30 seconds. But if you have any questions, issues, anything like that, hit the chat roll, because along with us is my partner Sean Wander, and he will be monitoring the chat roll and answering any questions. And Howard Reichman also is with us today, who'll be participating in the conversation on Interstellar. So if you want to join in, it was billed as a live discussion, and if you've seen the movie and you have a question, you can hit us through the chat room, or you could jump in on your bar there in their software that says room, and in there there's a way to request. You can kind of raise your hand. You can request access to the room, and then we can pull you into the live room, not the delayed 30-second room, and then you could, participate in the conversation. Obviously, we've got 75 people in the room right now. If everybody wants to participate, we probably can't have all 75 of you, but that's usually not the way it works out. Usually maybe 5 to 10 people like to participate in these things anyhow, so we anticipate we'll be fine. With all that now said, let me get started with the movie Interstellar, unless Howard or Sean have anything to add before that. They don't, that I can see. They would probably jump on right now if they did. Okay, so I asked a question in the, hold on, someone's chatting me, texting me. Okay, good. It was pretty much a go forward message. So one of the questions I asked in a couple of the emails as we were promoting this was the homework. I called it. A friend did his homework. Like, you guys really need more homework. Was pay attention to the first line of dialogue. Really, it was the first few lines of dialogue, and because they're quite amazing. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the interview kind of what's the term? The little interview clips, because those are a little bit of foreshadowing. Those clips come from the end of the movie. They come from the resolution. They're not part of the active story. They're just a piece. They're literally a piece from the resolution that was taken and say, hey, let's start with this. And sometimes you wouldn't even necessarily start your screenplay that way. That's a decision that's oftentimes made in post-production to kind of enhance the movie a little bit. But the first line of dialogue is, so we have these interviews of the future. That's not really where the real active current movie starts. It starts when we're in the airplane and something goes wrong. There's no dialogue there. And then the main character, Cooper, he wakes up. And his daughter, Murph, is standing in the doorway, and she says, Dad. And he replies something along the lines of, Murph, go back to bed. And then she says, I thought you were the ghost. Now, the first time watching the movie, this little exchange of dialogue would really not say much about the movie. But when you have seen the movie and pay attention to this exchange on the second pass, one has to sit there and go, oh my gosh, did they really say? I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, this is as big as a spoiler as it gets. Dad, I thought you were the ghost. This is the first line of dialogue they're going to use in the movie. Only if you've seen the movie can you appreciate what an incredible line of dialogue Dad, I thought you were the ghost is. Because if you haven't seen the movie, he's the ghost. He is the ghost. They start with a line of dialogue that, as a viewer of the movie, not having seen and understanding how the movie's going to unfold, means nothing. Yet talk about a rich line of dialogue, but there's nothing intrinsically special about it. This kind of goes back to like what we could probably have spend an hour discussing this exchange of dialogue. We could probably discuss the idea of what really is, what makes dialogue truly good. And we're going to see a lot of that, I think, as I go through this dissection. But quite an amazing first line of dialogue when you have, in retrospect, watch the movie and then go back and look at what they reveal in the first line of dialogue. They tell you the whole story. They tell you what the essence of this movie is about. It reveals that there's this ghost, and if you know the idea of the ghost, it's a critical part of the movie. But they don't only reveal that there's this ghost going on. She says, I thought you were the ghost. And he is the ghost. Later on in the movie, he becomes the ghost. So quite an amazing line of dialogue, and a really just very deep, insightful. For me, when I look at that, it really, there's nothing special. It's not about how, they're not speaking in fancy ways. It's very straightforward, simple language that reveals the essence of the movie. And that's what for me, what good dialogue is, not what I think good dialogue is. It's if you go and watch movies and you pay attention to movies, you dissect the movies that are made in the movies that are screenplays that are made in the movies. You dissect them at the movie level. Most dialogue is simple. Most dialogue is simple conversation about characters talking about the movie, talking about the theme, talking about what's going on, and revealing stuff that needs to be revealed so the story can move forward. Okay, so with that said, let's get this started. The actual dissection. Let me share my screen so you guys can see my breakdown of, as I was about to say, Inception, Interstellar. Okay. You guys see my screen now? Is everybody seeing the right screen? Yes? Let me take a look at the chat roll, make sure everybody's seeing the right screen. Actually, Sean, can you tell me if you're seeing the right screen? Because you see it now and not in 30 seconds. Yes, okay, good. Howard, do you have anything to add before I go on to this?
No, I want to see the movie through your eyes and through plot control. I'll chime in later.
All right, so we're going to just go through the core elements quickly. Here you can see I'm actually inside the software, our new software, Control Writer. So characterization, of course, it's just Cooper. We find out. I mean, it's not necessarily things you find out, but this is essential stuff about the character that's relevant to the character. So he's this ex-NASA pilot, but now he is a farmer. And of course, the setting, which is the world in which the movie is going to take place, it's the future of the Earth. Blight is destroying all the crops, and the only remaining food crop is corn. That's a lot of the setting. Now, all the science stuff, because I was thinking about all the science stuff that they've got in the movie. If you're not into science, like, my wife, eventually found out that I was watching the movie, and I was like, no, but you're not going to like it anyway. She wouldn't. She'd, hate a movie like this. But I was like, nah, I don't see Interstellar, it's science, and I had no idea what it was going to be science. The problem when you get married is you never actually get to watch a movie alone anymore. It's just reality. For those of you who are married, understand that. But all the science stuff really falls under the setting. So I was thinking, where does the science stuff go? And it actually, so I put under setting, and it actually works out pretty good there, because when we understand setting is the world the movie takes place in, not necessarily where the character comes from, the ordinary world of the character. The ordinary world of the character, which really is this Blight world. He's a farmer, and then he goes into NASA, and that's where all the science stuff, the science stuff's not part of his ordinary world. His ordinary world is he's a farmer, and then he goes into NASA and becomes the astronaut, and he's called on to do that, and that's where you see the science stuff's in the setting. Primary situation. So, what's this movie about? It's not about the underlying what it's about in the bigger sense of Blight and all that stuff, of course. But what's the specific story that's taking place? What is happening to someone, or what's someone trying to do? In that way, we understand it is it's an opportunity. Right here, I'm over here. Just highlight it so you guys can follow me. So it's an opportunity. So it's always opportunity, problem, or desire, to lead this mission into outer space that may save the human race. And that's really it in a nutshell, what this movie is really about on a story level. Plot motivation. So what's driving Cooper? What is his response? What does he want to do? So Cooper, just trying to make notes here after watching the movie. Hold on a sec, got a chat coming to me. Right. Okay. So Howard just said, but people will think there's a problem. It's a very important point. Where Howard just texted me, goes, but people are going to think there's a problem, non-opportunity. But the primary situation, Howard, it's not the blight. It's not the decay of the world. That's the setting, right? You with me, Howard? Jump in here.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Right. So that's what it's a very important question. And that's why I put opportunity. The blight, all that stuff that's going on, that's part of the setup. Yeah. That's the problem with the world, but that's not the specific story.
That's the ordinary world that he's living in.
Correct.
For us, we're interpreting it as, at least on the first go-around, is, oh boy, that's the problem. And now the plot motivation is going to be to fix that problem. But you're saying, and I think rightly so, is that when the movie opens up, that's the ordinary world. That's the given. Now the primary situation is going to be the opportunity for him to be a part of the solution to this.
Correct. Right, because we want to. This is critical, and it's worth us spending 2 or 3 extra minutes on this. Let me just Well, okay, because I got my screen up, so I'll just keep it on your beautiful face for a minute. Because I can control what people get to see. So no, it's a critical point because most people would make the mistake of thinking the movie is about the blight and it's about the problems with the world, and that's not what the story is about. That is the setting. That's the world in which the movie takes place. But what's going on specifically in this movie to this character, and that's the story we're specifically telling. It's an opportunity to lead the mission to outer space. That is the primary situation. When we break down Act 1, once I get through this, we'll go to Act 1. It's a critical distinction because many people make a mistake when they're working on their screenplays of what you just said. Oh, the movie is about blight is... No, we had to drill down to what it's about for the main character, what this is for them. So, all right. Let me jump back to my screen here. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. If there's any questions, hit Sean up in the chat room. He'll bring them in. Okay,
yeah,
so...
Mitch, on that note, if I could, just let me jump in real quick. You want to address whether or not you want to take questions as you're sort of going through deep storylines. There are going to be people that are new to the real writing process and to the core elements and some of the things. Do you want to break and answer those questions on the fly, or do you want to work through sections and then take?
Here's the way I look at it. We've never done this before in terms of the live interaction of the dissection. I think if there's good questions, let them come in. Let's just have a discussion. Let's have fun with this. I think, yeah, sure, why not? That's my opinion.
So with that said, there was a question earlier, and I'm just using first names only, but Jace was asking, what's the difference between plot motivation and personal goal?
Plot motivation and personal goal. We're gonna get to. Okay, we'll clarify that right now.
Great.
Yeah. So as I go through this, we'll clarify that. We'll do that right now. So plot motivation is what the character tries, or essentially their mindset, their purpose in dealing with the primary situation, the opportunity that, in this case, that presented. If there was a problem, how they deal with the problem. If there's something they desire, something they want, how they deal with that. So it's plot motivation, specifically how they're dealing with the primary situation. And, of course, and in this case, obviously, he really wants to go. He's got both this internal desire to travel. We see that in some of his dialogue, and then we see he's got the abilities. He's the man for the job. Matter of fact, perhaps one of the only people for the job that may be available. Hold on a second. Okay, let me just see if I can zoom in on the screen. I'm being asked to zoom in. Is this better? So I just can't scroll over there. That's not going to work. Hold on, let me zoom out a little bit.
Yeah,
too much.
Definitely better visually, but it's sometimes hard to navigate as you need to. So.
Yeah, it doesn't let me. It only lets me scroll so far to the left here. Okay. Hopefully this is more clear for everybody. So okay, so the personal goal, let's just jump down there since that's the question, is like what is it that drives the character independent of the movie? So this is sort of like the personal goal where we have the setting, which is sort of like the fundamental world in which the movie takes place. The personal goal is sort of like what's that underlying driving force that the character is about as it's related to the movie, not as it's related in general. We're going to see that the personal goal always is linked to the theme. So we're going to see that, let me work my way down. It would be better if I go down the list instead of trying to answer that question first. Let me just finish these. So the primary obstacle, which is always a failure, a journey, or a complication. That is a complication, failure, journey. At the level of the end of Act 1, in this case, there's a journey required to get to the planets they need to solve the primary situation, which is to finish the mission. So there's a mission to go to outer space to see if there's livable planets. I'm right over here, and there's a journey is required. So it's one of the three things that a primary obstacle always falls under the umbrella. Finally, resolution goal is what is it they are going to be required, what is the main character, specifically the main character, going to be required to do to ultimately fulfill what the primary situation is. And the plot motivation for for Cooper has always been he wants to do this, but he intends to come back. And the resolution goal is that they're going to have to do. Yeah, he's doing it for his kids. And that goes back to his personal goal in a second. He's very much motivated to save his own children. And in the end, he's going to pretty much have to not only sacrifice his children, because they have to go to plan B, which basically anybody on Earth dies. He has to sacrifice his own life. We're going to see that's what happens in Act 3, Act 2, with the second plot turning point, is when the resolution goal comes into play. And notice that it would be the opposite of what he wanted here with the plot motivation. So getting down to theme and personal goal is very important. So obviously the theme is, and the personal goal drives all the subplots. And the theme in this movie is there's a large-scale survival of the race as a whole, an adaptation. We see that theme in multiple places, and I'll point it out as we go through the movie. And the personal goal of Cooper is individual survival. See, everybody else is thinking on grand scale. We've got to survive. I see a request for someone to come in there, Sean. I see a request for I see a request.
No, James is covered. It was a different question, Mitch.
Okay.
But there is another. As long as you brought up question, we do actually have a question that's relevant to the subject coming from Richard. And again, I'm only using first names here. Unless somebody wants to be identified in full, then I'd be happy to use your full name. But Richard is asking, plot motivation is conflicted, isn't it? He wants to save the human race, lead the mission, but he has family ties which tear him apart.
That's right. Okay, so thank you for the clarification, because again, I'm doing these dissections kind of after the fact, and I was a little bit under the gun. But you're correct. With him, the plot motivation is very much he wants to. There's a conflicted component that he wants to. He's doing it for his own children. He's very self-motivated in what he's doing, and he's every intention of coming back. And then if what's the reversal of that? To understand the resolution goal, to extract the resolution goal, once you've got your plot motivation, just figure out what the opposite is. He's got to, obviously he's got to help them do plan B, which means his own family dies, and he's got to give up his own life for that to be successful, which means he dies. So the exact opposite of what he wanted to do in order to solve the primary situation is what ultimately works. And when it comes to theme, the same thing applies, the opposite. We look for the opposites. Once I identified, and this is literally how I broke down this movie, once I identified the theme as large-scale survival of the race as a whole, like that was the underlying theme that's kind of taking place among all the other characters, and I said, well, what would the opposite of that be? And then I was thinking about it. I said, well, he's into it for himself. Like he's into individual survival, and as soon as I did that, I saw it. I saw the movie open up. Like as soon as I figured out that was what was going on, it was like, that's it. That's the theme, and that's his personal goal. And here's some notes I did. Let me just zoom out so I can read my own notes. Like here, I made notes here. First of all, he's always teaching his children to be independent survivors and thinkers. We see that in some of the very brief actions we have at the beginning. And then and this is just a stream of notes I had made before I actually identified individual survival. I said, what's the opposite of survival? This is literally, I left it in here so you guys could see what I was thinking. I added this note after this was added. To stay the same, to not adapt. So this was first I was trying to answer, well, if survival of the race and adaptation's the theme, staying the same. And I said, that's not it. But I said, where do we see this with Cooper? And then I said, okay, he's upset with them rewriting history about the Apollo mission, right? So here, these people, the other people in the movie, are all about survival. Now, we've got to rethink history. History doesn't matter anymore. This is about survival. This is about us. It doesn't matter whether the Apollo mission is real or fake. It doesn't make a difference anymore. This is about us doing what we need to do. And then he's upset that he wants his son to go to college, but they think that he needs to be a farmer because he'll be a great farmer, because that's what's valuable in this society. And then I made a subnote here that he reluctantly goes on the mission because there's really no other way for him to save his family. And that's when it dawned on me, and I finally came, individual survival. He's about individual survival, where everybody else in the movie is about survival on a much broader scale. So some quick subplot stuff. We have Murph, his daughter, obviously. I'm just looking at, I've been requested to pause. Well, I've been requested to pause and let some questions come in. At this time, now that we've done, I'm going to go through the subplots. Anyone who wants to jump in, talk about the core elements, we're going to take a quick break, not a break like get up and get coffee break, but a break in terms of moving forward to invite any live participants into the conversation or questions in the chat roll to specifically discuss these core elements. So you'll see that in about 30 seconds. In the meantime, I will finish up subplots. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, we actually do have a new request here. So Richard did jump on here. He found it. So you want to invite Richard on and bring him on?
Sure, bring him on while I finish subplots. Yep.
So guys, everybody, just a warning. I can't remember because I was trying to keep up with everyone's questions in their chat. So I don't know if Mitch said this already, but when we invite you on, you may be prompted to allow use of your microphone and/or camera. So just be aware that you're going to be prompted for that, and then it'll bring you on. If you prefer to not be on camera, you could always just not be on camera, but make sure your mic is live so that we can hear you. But I'm going to invite Richard on here, and Richard should be converting into a...
Yes, let me finish up the subplots while he comes on.
Go ahead, Mitch.
So the subplots, here are the main subplots. We got Murphy's daughter, obviously. She's reluctant to see what her father is doing, and she's refusing to adapt. She's just like her father. Just in a different way, just like her father. She's refusing to adapt, refusing to accept that what he's doing is for the betterment of mankind as a whole. What she really wants is that personal relationship with it. We're going to see this theme play out the whole movie as we go through the actual acts. Tom is his son, and he's all about survival, but he's much more willing to be that adaptable person. We see mainly he comes into play later on in the movie, but he's much more okay with the large-scale kind of a survival of the race. He's okay being that farmer. Brand, the daughter, is so she's the one who really is kind of driving the mission. She represents the survival of the race over the individual to me. Like what she really represents is sort of like, well, Plan B may be what we need to do. And she'll be, influenced by Cooper, because we see in the end that when Cooper has to give up his life, later on we're going to see at the end of Act 2, Cooper has to sacrifice his own life and fall into the black hole so that she can survive and give. She's not so fast to want that to happen, is she? So suddenly, when there's personal relationships at play, that's an underlying theme obviously as well. What really comes into play, and we'll see that. That's where let's jump to the man character. So man is the character who is like the main scientist, kind of, who had gone into space, and it turns out he's falsifying his data so that people will come back and get him, and we'll see he plays out. So there we have, and he's the one who has the whole dialogue about survival of, he didn't think it would be so difficult. So we see that he's in stuff you don't see in the movie. Before the movie begins, we need to go out there and find a planet that people can live on, and now that he's alone on a planet that people can't live on and no one's coming back for him, he's going to die there alone, suddenly he's willing to falsify data and risk all of human race, all of the future of the human race for himself. And of course, Professor Brand he represents the survival of the race of the individual, so much so that he lies. Professor Glenn, he is her father. He misleads everyone to advance the survival of the race, to force these people to go out there, including Cooper, in order that they should do this mission and save the human race. So there are the core elements. So, are there any questions at this point? I don't see any requests for anybody to jump on. So,
Mitch, there's a few. Richard did try to get on, and I think we're having some difficulties on getting him back. I did try to re-invite him. He's showing as a presenter, but he must be getting prompted on his end. But there are a number of questions in the chat. That's what I was saying. It's just everyone's got so many curiosity questions. We want to try to get to as many as possible, but it's really hard for me to answer them in the flow. That's why I was saying, once you're through with a good resting point,
all right, so let's just go through some of the questions now. This is a good time.
Yeah, very good.
So I'll just let you read them off, and we'll...
All right, I'll start with order first. So Richard, you were adjusting Richard's. We've had a couple of requests to really just sort of look at the core elements again and just brief definitions. The one thing I will say about that, and I'll forget for me, I think Pablo was asking for a quick review. Mitch did define those a little bit here, and Pablo, if we have time at the end, we'll go and do another full review just of definitions. But we've got so much to cover here on this today, and there are so many places where you can find in our materials the breakdown of the core elements. But like I said, at the end and final Q&A, we'd be happy to answer that one. But for now, we want to try to address the ones that are related to the core elements as they pertain to Interstellar. Let me see, Richard asked the other one. Let's see. Any delay? Okay, so Kenny's question was, could we say there is a big A of what the film is about and also the little a of what it's about? Meaning big A about equals the philosophy theme and deeper meaning of what our story discusses. Little a about equals the journey that our main character takes, the primary obstacle.
But yeah, I mean, there's always, of course, every movie, there's multiple movies taking place in every movie. Multiple stories, not really multiple movies, because you have the primary movie. The primary story starts with sort of like, what's the world that the movie's taking place in? There's no specific story at the level of setting, at the level of characterization. That's why the core elements are stacked the way they are. Because at the level of characterization, you just have a character, you just have a person who's going around his daily life. He's a farmer, he's an ex-pilot. That's who the guy is. He's got a family, he's got 2 children. He lives with his father-in-law. And then the setting is, this is the world they live in. So there's that, but there's nothing specific. There's no specific story. But then as you get further down, you get to the next layer. Now there's a specific story taking place within that story. And all the stuff, all those, again, the science stuff, the stuff going on in the world, all the issues are at that layer of the movie. And that layer of the movie is a part of the movie. It's not ignored. But it's not. There's no specific story that we key in on, and that drives the things forward. So that's where the primary situation comes in. We've got something specific that is happening to the main character that will drive. That's a driving force. Something he wants. Something he needs. Maybe a problem. Maybe an opportunity. There's something there that's driving this now, and then he's got a response to that. So that's the second layer of the movie. That's the primary situation, the plot motivation. Then we get a third layer, which is, and that layer is it's very much an independent layer. Then we have a third layer, which is the primary obstacle layer, really, which is now there is some very specific complication, failure, or journey that is required to be successful. So we've got a primary situation that needs to be resolved via the plot motivation, and then we've got the primary obstacle that says not so fast. We're going to make this more interesting because now a journey, in the case of this movie, a journey is required to get to the planets they need to go, right? So, and then that's going to require ultimately the resolution goal, which is the characters going to have to rethink everything. Everything that they thought was going to be required is going to have to be reconsidered completely in order to truly be successful, and in order to truly achieve and overcome the primary obstacle and fulfill the requirements of the primary situation. But below these 3 layers, which is really the core story, is the personal goal and the theme, and this is where we get personal. This is where you have your character arc layer takes place. And the personal goal and the theme is really that real fine, where you get it's about something very tangible. It's about the theme that's going to carry through it the most deepest layer of your movie. And in this case, we're going to see the scale, the large scale of the human race as a whole, and that's what almost all the characters represent that. And then he represents this individual survival, the nature of the individual within that. Huge themes. And by the way, good dialogue, let's go back to that first line of dialogue. Good dialogue, it's all about these. You want to write good dialogue, make sure you're to be able to go through and check off where the dialogue falls into. Does it fall in this? 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 And of course, subplots are all out of these bottom 2. So it doesn't have to be fancy words. It doesn't have to be creative way that characters speak. What has to be is really good emphasis on these things. The dialogue should reveal all these things. Should reveal all these layers. You and I, Howard, we were discussing when I said, when I broke it down, I said, hey, check this out, what I found. I'm doing the dissection of of Interstellar, and like I was like, do you remember the first line of dialogue? You were like, no. I was like, yeah, she says, I thought you were the ghost, and you were like, holy crap, she does? Because you don't remember that at the beginning, but that's good dialogue. That's unbelievably good dialogue. But is it that clever? It's just that it's about what the movie's about. So let's jump in. On that note, unless there's more questions, I want to jump into Act 1.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are. I just want to catch us up a little bit, Mitch, and then I think we'll be at a good moving point. And most of these should be fairly quick to answer. Follow up, Mortimer saying, so plot motivation links the beginning to the end of the story.
Plot motivation, in a way, does. What plot motivation does is it's the initial logical actions that the character takes to deal with the primary situation. Whatever the primary situation is, it's got a logical order. Like, this makes the most sense how we solve that. Yeah. So yes, it's a linking. Because the movement to resolution is driven by it. At least until the midpoint of the movie. At the midpoint of the movie, when we get into Act 2, we'll see. At the midpoint of the movie, there is a failure or a success, but there's a stall in terms of the forward flow of the plot motivation.
Okay. Right. Jace is asking, I understand that plot motivation is the opposite of resolution goal, but personal goal also seems opposite of resolution goal.
Personal goal is specifically it's a good observation. Certainly in this movie it is. More often than not, we link the personal goal to theme. And there may be, because the personal goal is much more theme related, it's much more deep rooted in terms of deeper concepts. Obviously, there's a clear linking of the opposite nature in this movie. I don't know that every movie would have that relationship. More often than not, when you're developing the story, plot, motivation, resolution, goal, we look for opposite concepts, and personal goal and theme, we look for opposite concepts. And of course, there's going to be something, the nature of the personal goal, which is what the character kind of really who he is, and the plot motivation, which is his natural course of action, and the resolution goal needing to be the opposite. There's going to be a component of opposite between the personal goal and resolution goal, I would imagine, and very often, but I've never looked at it so closely. But yeah, clearly in this movie there is.
Last but not least, to catch us up, Mitch, Blake is asking, what's the midpoint? It's the planet with the giant waves where Doyle is killed, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. He's right. And we're going to get to it in a minute. Yep.
And there you have it. So back to the story we go, Mitch.
Yep. So let's jump into Act 1. So first line of Murph's dialogue, not first line of dialogue. I knew I wrote that first email I sent out, the first line of dialogue. Then I was looking at it, it's like, is the first line of dialogue? Was that, is the first line of Murph's dialogue? I thought you were the ghost. I mean, it introduces the climax. It introduces the story's outcome. It's a brilliant line of dialogue, so subtle, so brilliant. I can tell you, Christopher Nolan, who's just a fantastic writer, a fantastic director, and his brother, they were jumping up and down when they wrote this dialogue. And there's something we can learn from this dialogue, because right here, I'm on the first I'm stuck on the first bubble of the Act 1. But I think there's a lot to be learned from this dialogue, because there's no way they sat down to write the screenplay and said, fade in and start writing dialogue, and came up with this dialogue. This is why you really have to think through your whole story. That you couldn't ever write that line of dialogue without knowing the excruciating details of your whole movie, and then going back so there's a whole ebb and flow in terms of developing a movie. You have to lay out the story, and then you have to develop out ideas of the movie, and then you refine those ideas, and then refine them more, and then refine them more. That's how you get the lines of dialogue like that. So establish the world. This is all set up. Establish the world, the future, where food crops are dying off, the earth is no longer available to sustain life, and farming is the most important job. Space exploration is shunned, and history is rewritten to deny that it happened. So you can see how they're setting up the frame. I'm being asked to zoom in a little bit, so we'll do that. See, I jumped over to, there we go. Hopefully that's better. Use of video interviews to establish the world of dust. So they actually use the stuff from the resolution of the movie to establish what the world is like. They've got these interviews of people describing, life on Earth was, you don't know that's what they're saying, life on Earth, but they're saying, I remember the dust bowls and the stuff like that. So they're using this to just set the frame, to set it all up. So the first after that opening scene with the dialogue we've already covered, we get more conversations. The conversation at breakfast that morning is farming, Murph's ghost, and talks about science. And all the things the movie's about. It talks about science, the setting. Farming, setting. Murph's ghost, setting up the story that's going to be very relevant to the movie. No extraneous stuff going on there. Every piece of that dialogue is critically important. Not necessarily the way they say it, but it's a component of what the movie's about. So here they are even looking at the broken lunar lander module, which broke after the ghost knocked books off the shelf. Now, again, if you haven't seen the movie, it's just some ghost she's talking about knocked something off the shelf. But actually, when you see it, that's a part of the ending where her father is stuck inside of in the black hole and in that array of the room, and he knocks it off. It's one of the things he does. So again, more introduction to the climax, and then her father tells her something important. He says, Murph, he sits down and he's like, we can't just accept this ghost. You need to analyze it, study it, think about it, explain it scientifically. It goes back to that theme of who he is, cares about his children. But remember, this is why she's sitting there figuring it out. This is why, because of that, because her father tells her to do that, is the reason she's figuring out the Morse code messages that are coming in. Isn't that amazing? Think about that. Her father tells her to figure out what the ghost is trying to communicate. And of course, if he doesn't tell her, she doesn't do it, and the movie doesn't unfold the way it will unfold ultimately. More of the setup. So because they get a flat tire, and they want to introduce sort of the Murphy's Law. Whatever can happen will happen, and she's kind of upset with her name. Okay, and I think the purpose of the flat was just to set up a little bit of the kids, more of that he's teaching his kids to be sort of self-reliant. And then, of course, they chase and capture the drone. And the drone is interesting because it's something caused it to fly this low. They don't really ever explain that, except maybe we can think it's something going on with his house. And he mentions that mission control went down 10 years ago. A little more of just setting up the background of the story. And I suspect there may have been more involved with maybe an earlier draft of the script about this drone, because they never really come back to it except to say sort of the idea that and it's subtle, but that the robots that control the drone, sort of, they have to learn to adapt also. I think I made that note here. The computers, they have to also learn how to adapt. Now Cooper goes to the school, meets the children's teachers, and mentions where does his taxes go. He says, I pay taxes, where the taxes go, and the school's like, well, we don't get the money. Of course, none of them know that NASA is still operational. And again, more emphasis on the importance of farming, issues with Murph, she's just not accepting the reality of the life they have to live in, the world they have to live in, which is about the society as a whole as opposed to the individual. And there's a theme of useless machines playing out there. But that's, again, when I was making these notes, I hadn't really refined my thinking about what the theme might have been. I was just thinking out loud as the theme, useless machines, which I don't think that is the theme. So I got a question of the drone sequence establishes Cooper's, I guess, his knowledge, and is that what he means? Yeah, I mean, yes, I think the drone scene works to establish Cooper's expertise in technology and in robotics, and yes, I agree with that, absolutely. Absolutely, it's a part of establishing who this character is, for sure. For those of you who can't, because I know I only have my screen up, I've got a chat hole here. Specifically, Sean is presenting me with notes that are coming from you guys. So, continue with the setup. Cooper is called home because something weird is going on with the robotic combines that he set up. And again, more setup of the climax. Because because everything going on in the house at this point is linked to the climax. This is one of the cool things about this movie, at least the way they were able to set it up. More books are off the shelf, and she mentions that she's doing what he said to do at breakfast, is to study what the ghosts are doing. So already, stuff that was said just one scene ago is now feeding in. So the story, she's just not taking action. She was told to take action, and now she's doing it. And And she even says she's checking for messages. She thinks maybe they're giving messages. So we're getting some stuff about, theme-related stuff of Cooper talking to his father-in-law. So moving on. So now the inciting incident. The inciting incident for me was the baseball game and that dust storm. Kind of kicks everybody home, and when they go home, it's where they see the dirt lines, and this is where Cooper gets a little freaked out and is like, Murph, you're not sleeping in your room anymore, because Murph is like, it's the ghost, and he realizes something is going on. There is some kind of message actually coming in, and he realizes these are coordinates to somewhere, and Murph and him travel to, and they end up in NASA, and they are interrogated by the robot. We get introduced to these robots. How did you find this place? It's a hidden place. And turns out he's introduced to Dr. Brand, who he knows from when he used to work for NASA, and Cooper explains how they learned the coordinates, and we introduce his daughter and the kind of character she is. I think that we had a question about Murph is not accepting social fiction. Is that what she means, Sean? I don't understand the question. I mean, Murph is not accepting social reality as it is in the world that the movie takes place, because that's what the scene in the with the principal of the school indicates. She's getting in fights because she says the Apollo missions actually happened, and they're like, well, it kind of didn't happen. So they're rewriting history as required by the world and society they live in, but Murph's not accepting that. So, right. So I think the answer is correct. The answer is yes to the question. So moving on to the last thing. So we get the plot point 1, where basically Cooper gets the tour and explanation of what they're doing, how the food crops are dying. Corn is the only one, and it's not going to last much longer. And the next generation will be the last one on Earth, setting up that something's got to be done to save them, and they've got a plan. Well, and we're not meant to save the world, we're meant to leave it. One of the lines of dialogue. Again, when I'm going through, I'm just putting down stuff that I think might be relevant to the story. Again, I don't dig into every single line of dialogue here. I do watch it pretty closely when I'm going through dissection. I watch pretty closely. I go through the dialogue. Explanation of the wormhole and the Lazarus mission, which the Lazarus mission is one that man ran to get out of all the planets. And they need Cooper to be the pilot because they chose you. See, now this idea that Cooper was sent to NASA, this message came to him through the ghosts to be the one who's sent to do this. Plan A and B are explained. Cooper and Murph go home, and Murph is mad because it's clear that her father's going to be leaving him. And there was a line of dialogue I thought was interesting because his father-in-law basically says, don't trust the right thing done for the wrong reason. It's the why of the thing. And we see that kind of comes up later. So it's, again, little bits of dialogue that, are very strong thematic ideas that, play themselves out multiple times in a movie. And we'll see that happens later. That same kind of message. Of course, Cooper, he speaks to his daughter about being a parent, and explains, that they chose, just get that whole thing, and she wants him to stay. She's like, the message even says stay, because she's decoded it, and she's insisting, and he ultimately leaves. And that's the end of Act 1. Do we have any questions? Anybody want to jump on, interact live with on the conversation based on Act 1? Howard, do you have anything to add at this time?
Yeah, why not? I was kind of baffled because they kept saying that they set up the wormhole. They gave us this technology. So I guess the question for me was, who's this they? Then you find out later that this, the Tesseract, that's the word we were looking for before, Mitch. The Tesseract was basically built so that Cooper could come back and communicate with his daughter, which would then provide the ingredients for the fulfillment of the storyline and the saving of the human race. But it still leaves, for me, I guess I'm still trying to figure it out. I saw this movie a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still trying to work it out, but there's certain things that that I guess people from the future who went back in time, I mean, this idea of building a wormhole and stuff, where does that, it sounds like it's, there's some things that are within the scope of what man can do and some things that are not within the scope of what man can do. And so it kind of touches on the supernatural without actually giving any attribution to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, they took a lot of creative, because once you step to the edge of, and there's a truth in this in filmmaking, so they're just trying to extract the message. Once you step to the edge of what we believe or know currently is the capabilities of what man is in potential, it has the potential to do or be, right? And you go beyond that, it could be anything, right? So they created a reality that could ever be real. Who are we to say it can never be? Because it's well beyond this. It's some future generation, thousands and thousands of years into the future are going to be able to do this. Okay, is it likely? No, but yeah. They step outside the realm of what a potential reality could be, and therefore anything becomes the reality. I mean, it's no different than Star Wars, right? Star Wars is a potential future of, I guess actually that's in galaxy far, far away. It's a whole different evolution of people. So, but again, the point is you get the reference of Star Wars. It's a different person's take on what reality could be. I mean, there's, Harry Potter is a different take on what people could be. Just stepping outside what the reality we know into one that potentially is plausible. I mean, I'll tell you, not at Act 3, I didn't particularly love the ending. I thought I thought it was clever filmmaking. Christopher Nolan's a clever filmmaker, clever writer, but it's sort of like I don't know. It was sort of like
this whole conversation is a slippery slope because we're here to dissect the structure of the movie,
right,
and know how it works within plot control, but we're kind of getting caught in this idea of trying to second guess or understand better the more of the ethereal aspects of the story that aren't necessarily part of the plot structure. So we got to be careful. But essentially the movie, this is a great example of the fact that scripts cannot be written in a linear fashion. They must have done layer. I mean, I know for a fact that the script started in like 2005 or 2006. With Jono, his brother, and they had other directors and stars attached to it throughout the years. And then after Nolan finished the Batman trifecta, he turned his attention to this and did a rewrite. So he got credit alongside his brother. They brought in this top scientist who became an executive producer, and that's kind of how that evolution of the movie began. I'm sure the first couple of scripts, maybe the first 40 scripts, how these things go, were vastly different. So each person adds their layer. I just don't I want to make sure we don't get caught having this big love fest about the movie, as opposed to discussing the structure of the storytelling.
Right. So we got a couple people that came on live now. So let's invite them into the conversation.
Some people were having difficulty finding the room, so I just invited a few people. So let's see who is on our far left. There's Chris. Okay, there it showed up. So we've got Chris, we've got James, and
Chris and James. That's what I see.
Chris and James. Okay, as James, it shows up as Dennis. Dennis and James, this one and the same, I guess. Okay.
One and the same.
One and the same. Great.
Welcome. Is it Dennis or is it James? Shall we call you Dennis or James?
Let's go left to right.
Dennis B. There's another Dennis.
Okay, Dennis B. Welcome. So.
Good to be here.
So let's start with Dennis, since we're already talking to Dennis. What insights, questions, answers, thoughts do you have for us on the movie Interstellar?
Well, I saw the film 4 times while it was in the theater, so I liked it. And one of the things that did bother me at first was the Tesseract scene. I know we're going to get to that at the end, but how it connects to the beginning, it was seeing it again and again that I saw that Cooper has to change his opinion. He first thinks he's there to change the past, and then he changes to change the future. He realizes that it's not Cooper that's the center of the universe at this point. It's Murph. The people from the future want to talk to Murph, not Cooper. At that point, I see a very big self-sacrifice.
That's good insight. That's very good insight, definitely. And it plays right into what we're saying, like his shift in thinking, and this is, it's important because when you jump back to the core elements here, I'm not sharing my screen, but when you look at those themes, because I only really dug in one layer, you're going to really dig in a lot of layers from that idea once you identify that the theme of human survival as a whole and individual survival and the race as a whole and individual. When you get that theme, then you dig deeper on you. That's the root. That's the root. But now build all the branches that's connected to that. And what you're saying is, make the movie, when you're writing these movies, make your movie about more of that, deeper and deeper. And that's really how you write great movies. And I think your point is 100%. It's not that it's there accidentally, and it may not even be there intentionally by the writer sitting there saying, I should do this and connect it this way, but just by following and understanding the root of the theme, follow that. And then you'll have great character actions and you'll have great dialogue by just following that. Once you identify the roots of your theme, follow the theme all the way through. Just make your movie about those things. It's a good insight. Anything else? For someone,
I agree with you. You don't know how to begin the movie until you finish the draft, until you finish several drafts of the end. Then you really get a sense of how to start the movie.
Right.
That's why it's so connected.
Yeah, it's doing the hard work of writing, and that's obviously part of the power of plot control, and the software is it lets you do that thinking without being stuck inside the writing mode. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. It's work. It's hard work, but it's when you do the exercise and you really do the thinking of the whole movie all the way through, you just end up with the kind of movies that actually get made. So what do you got to tell us, Chris? Right? It was Chris?
Hey, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you beautifully.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I appreciate what was it Dennis was saying. It may answer my question, and first of all, I want to preface this. I'm a massive Christopher Nolan story fan. I was one of the knuckleheads who watched Inception week after week in the matinee, alone in the theater, breaking it down with notepads and a little LED light in the theater, just constantly enthralled with his storytelling ability. So with that said, I'm going to hammer him a little here, and I may be off base because I've only seen this movie once. But in the end, he's so desperately in that 3D time world, the Tesseract, trying to tell his daughter to tell him to stay. He's just massively grief-stricken that he can't communicate to her, and really that he can't get his own self to listen to his daughter to stay because of his love for her. He's really at that point where he's saying, the hell with the human race, I just want to be with my baby girl. And as dads, we kind of know what that means. But at the same time, he gives himself the coordinates to NASA. To me, that stands as a paradox.
I think because it's a legitimate. Listen, filmmaking is not perfect. Movies are never perfect, and I can assure you, if you could sit down any great director and writer and ask them about the movie that went into the theater that we watch and we say is wonderful or horrible, they'll tell you that was not complete. There was just things about it that they just couldn't solve certain problems. But at some point, you got to say, here's the movie we're making, because at the end of the day, it's about making money, and you can only at some point you got to get the revenues coming in. But I think in terms of understanding what's important for us is that the key resolution goal, which is when he makes the shift of mindset, the shift of thinking, is when he decides he's going to help Brand survive and go with Plan B, because that's when he's completely changed. He's not going to go back and save his children. He knows he can't. Not that it's just there's not a possibility anymore. There's no way of finagling the rockets or the science or anything like that. It's over. There is one possibility that if you get in there and find the information that they need inside the black hole. So in some way, there's this very slight fine line of, if I go in the black hole, maybe, just maybe, by some miracle, I'll be able to communicate the information that's required, and that's actually how what turns up. So from our point of view, understanding what the resolution goal does for the movie, and that is the resolution goal is that moment in which the character understands the opposite of what they've been trying to do until this point is what will solve the story. And in this case, it's sacrificing himself and helping Brand go do Plan B, which is also sacrificing his children. Because for all reasonable, practical purposes, falling into a black hole is death, except in movies. Then when he's in there and he realizes the world he's kind of stuck in, we get. Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like now he's reversed back to yes, save, stay. But I think that's just stuff to make the movie more interesting because now he's saying stay, and it was what it turns out he was the one saying stay. We saw it at the beginning. We saw the scene, and then he shifts. He realizes what this is all about. It's about me communicating with Murph, and then I guess the mission, what changes it for him is when he recognizes that he's going to potentially have the information they need. Actually, I'm not even sure that's the order that it broke down in, but he's got the information that he's going to need to communicate to her, and now he needs history to unfold the way it has unfolded. He can't stay. He needs to get there so that he can get into the black hole and then be able to communicate the information that's required. So if that doesn't happen, then the mission is also not successful. So I hear you. It's sort of like that, Back to the Future.
And did he create the wormhole? Did he create the wormhole for himself?
Well, no, I think they answered that is created by some future generation that they can't even comprehend, created it for them. But of course, it's sort of that Back to the Future question. If you change the future, then you change the past, or whatever it is. Especially if the past is relying on the future. Of course, if they didn't have this mission be successful, there would be no future generation to now in. So you can just get circular thinking with it, but at the end of the day, you can only go so far with logic thinking in movies because me and Howard, you and Howard, when we're working together, we always have these conversations. Like, there's a point at which you got to let logic go. And I always have that opinion. It's sort of like as long as this plausibility can't be, you can't have pure, perfect plausibility in storytelling.
We argue where that line is though, because the audience is very smart. I mean, I don't know how many other hangouts are going on in the last couple of months dissecting Interstellar, but there's a lot of big questions. I mean, if the future generation that's going to build the wormhole is alive at all and related to human beings, then the wormhole's already been created. What's there to create?
Right, no, 100%. Because again, this is sort of that Back to the Future logic. Because it draws on the board, but it would be different. I mean, the answer is, I mean, I would disagree a little bit. I draw the line a little further lenient, that it doesn't have to be purely logical. And my basis for everything I say, whether it's about dialogue, whether it's about story, whether it's about the structure I use, the breakdown of real writing, or even this conversation about logic, it's just I'm based on what I see the movies that are made having in them, because to me that's what should dialogue be like. I want my dialogue to be like the movie, the stuff that gets made into movies. I want my stories to be like the ones that get made into movies. I want my logic, and we'll go a little further here, Howard, to be acceptable at the level that's accepted with a screenplay that someone read and a studio approved and green lighted and budgeted and cast and said we're going to make this new movie, even though it had logic flaws. And the hell, let Howard take over.
I got 3 words for you: M. Night Shyamalan. Okay. Just don't even get me started. The one with Mark Wahlberg talking to the trees. All-time worst movie in my book. But yeah, so let's not rely on studio movies. But I think that within my voice is going again. Within the realm of the story itself, the logic has to work. Listen, I spent a couple of days in the LA County morgue, much to my own dismay, in order to get the right dialogue and the right information about body decomposition for a project. That's necessary because anybody, there is that line. The line's movable, but something like this, it's first of all, they had so many physicists on the payroll of this movie that they were really attacking huge questions that are going to be around for another millennia unless they get some amazing insight. These are real big, NASA-sized questions about the universe. The movie just is presupposition about how it can be dealt with. I guess ultimately I felt a little dissatisfied with the movie because I'm thinking so much about it, and none of the answers I'm getting are giving me a lot of satisfaction. But it was entertaining. It was good. I think Christopher Nolan bit off a little more than he can chew on this one because of some of the logic issues that we're discussing now. But on the whole,
I think that it's just 2 things that I was thinking about as you're talking. Was number one is you're 100% right. There are logic issues that really need to be. You got to be very careful with them because there's sort of like that forced component of where a story is reliant on a logic issue that really that is a crux point. It's a plot point. In other words, there's that if with the logic issue really impacts the story progression, where it's part of this is at the end and it's a subtle thing. It's only after the fact we can kind of think about it and say, hey, there's a logic issue. Like, to me, that's okay, because when you're watching it, a smart person may pick it up, but the average audience person is sort of like too dazed by like, what is going on here? I don't even understand it. But to be worried to think about a logic issue. But for the average person, it's just.
But that's why the father-daughter story, and I see Dennis is talking about it. I think Richard mentioned
it. Actually, Marius's point is a very good one, saying that there's emotional logic that audiences will buy that may not strictly meet the rigors of other logic.
And that overrules.
That's very true.
The logic, or the lack of the other logic. That's definitely true. That's why the father-daughter story. Some people on the first view might think, hey, that's the story of the movie. It's about a father and a daughter. The father's to blast off into outer space, and the daughter's left behind to deal with that. It's almost like a Spielberg type of missing father storyline. But that's driven by the skeleton of the story, which is the Earth going to hell. There was something else I was going to say. I'm just reading some of the chat here.
Howard, if I could, keep that thought in mind. Chris, did we answer your comments and your thoughts and your questions?
Yes, actually, got it three ways there with Mitchell and with Howard, someone else's input. The two factors really help is, stop being a armchair critic and realize you got to get the damn movie made. And second, emotional logic. At a certain point, if you're building the story well, then that emotion should take over and it'll trump the, whatever you call it, real-world logic. But thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you for participating.
It's great. And the guys, we can bring you back anytime. I'll take care of Chris in just a second. Mitch, before we continue with the others, there were a couple of other not specific related to the theme questions that are worth answering and that I do want to address. Someone had asked, and I'll just get to it specifically. I think I chatted it to you also, Mitch. Yes, it was Frank, and then someone had thought about the purpose being to sell, ultimately to sell or explain how plot control works, which is always in part true. There's a tool and a resource that's helpful, but that's not ultimately the ultimate answer to this question, which was, what's the purpose of dissecting the movie? To help a writer understand how to organize the ideas for a completely different movie, or to become a better understanding of how Nolan's film is organized? What can I do with this dissection in working with my own script?
I think the answer is both. I think it's both. I think one is to better understand how to organize your own movies. Look, I think here it is, because I've done a lot of these dissections, and certainly the course itself. If you have the mega course, there's the 10 dissections that the course is built on. Then I've done multiple dissections. We've got this. It's to give you confidence in the method. So I think there is a component of that you can use this. You can use this structure. You can use the core element. Use the triangulation. You can use this with confidence and know that maybe there are other ways, and I don't say there aren't, other ways to approach filmmaking. This is a way that definitely works. This is a way that if you move through this process, you get your acts to work this way, you get your core elements to line up this way, you will have the potential makings of a movie that has everything that is needed to write a successful movie. And I think there's that part of it. It's sort of give yourself, just give yourself confidence in the system. And I think the second part is to better understand how other people do it, to just dig in, to see how dialogue manifests itself and what good dialogue really is. Not what people say good dialogue is, what it is. Because good dialogue is what gets made into movies. At the end of the day, that's good dialogue. It's it's when you really go look at movies that are made, not theoretical dialogue or real dialogue that's made in movies of this caliber. That's how you know what good dialogue is.
Right, and that's absolutely true, and I will add to that a little bit later, but hopefully that answers the questions. At the end of the day, the key thing to remember is that this process is about understand the critical building blocks of any movie story, regardless of what the genre is. It's not just about a product or a service or even a software. The fact that there's our software plot control that helps facilitate this process and make it more user-friendly and easier to work through, that sort of stands on its own merit. But the core real writing framework that's used in these building blocks is really what's so powerful, and that's why we go through these different kinds of movies, ranging from romantic comedies to action movies, even back in the 80s, all the way to your Academy Award-winning epic films. It really works across the board because these are the critical story blocks.
And then another important point on that is that, and then we'll continue moving, is I just lost my train of thought. Within that is that this is a 2-hour 40-minute movie, and it's a long movie, but it's still structurally. I thought for sure it was going to be a 4-act because I break down Armageddon in the course, mega course, that's a 4-act movie. I demonstrate why that's a 4-act movie according to my system, and I thought for sure this had to be a 4-act movie, and it turned out it wasn't. It turned out this was a straight 3-act movie, just very long scenes and extended dialogue, extended stuff, so just long, but clearly just straight up 3-act. I got another question coming. Structural question: why did the pacing slow down so much before the discovery of the treachery on the ice world? Well, we're going to be going to really it's an interesting question from Dr. A. Okay, let's go through Act 2, and as I go through Act 2, I'll think about the question. I want to just say one more thing before I go back into the software. So here's an interesting book. So Howard knows I've had this book for years and years and years. I don't understand half of what it says, but I always had this idea. I wanted to make a movie, be able to write a movie that really incorporates all the really cool science, wormholes and black holes and all this stuff. And what's interesting is when you look at a movie like this, it's such an important thing. I learned a lot just watching. I know it, but you just learn. It becomes more a part of who you are. The movie's not about that. That's the setting. All that science stuff, everything that would be in this book to get one movie is all setting. It's all part of the setting. It's not really what the movie's about. The movie is ultimately about a father and a daughter and a specific story of a journey that has to take place. That's what the movie's. That's the telling of the movie. So let's move on to Act 2. Let me reshare my screen here. 1 second. I think this is the one. All right. So you see my screen. Act 2. And the question before us from Dr. A. Structural question: why did the pacing slow down so much before the discovery of the treachery on the ice world? So it's a very important question. We'll get to it. So am I zoomed in enough? Should I zoom in more? The software doesn't let me zoom in more. So let me zoom out. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. It jumps over to... Okay. So the Tier 2, we got the journey begins. They blast off into outer space. I'm going to try and move a little faster since we are over an hour. The travel from the Earth to spaceship, the ring module, we get that. It just literally the story starting, the journey it's about the journey now. Right now, this is the beginning of Act 2 is literally about the journey, the primary obstacle. If it was a failure, it would be about the failure. If it was about a complication, it would be about the complication. And Die Hard is about the complication. And I can't think of any off my mind that's about the failure, but in this case, it's about a journey. So they're on the journey. So then Act 2 begins. We now have a primary obstacle. A journey is required, and they're on the journey. It's that simple. Filmmaking is that simple. They've got to do a journey. Let them go do a journey. And this whole part of the movie, it's about the journey. That's it. So they settle this, obviously, discussions. We get some components of the theme. It's not even a lot of the theme. There's some, but for the most part, it's just the journey. Journey. Murph still won't communicate with her father, so there's some theme relationship going on there. But they trip through the wormhole near Saturn, get journey. They travel through the wormhole, journey. Interesting thing that happens as they're traveling through the wormhole is Dr. Brandt reaches out and touches one of them. I have first touch from one of them. We're going to find out that later she was touching Cooper, who has been ejected now at that point. So in other words, timeless, the very ending, he gets ejected from the wormhole, from the black hole, back into the wormhole, and somehow in there he is right there at the moment they're going by. Just a cool filmmaking, just cool little connecting the movie to itself. I thought it was kind of cool. Ultimately, more journey. They get to the first planet. And the problem is the planet is so close to the black hole that every hour on the planet is going to be the equivalent of 7 years on Earth. So this is important because this goes to Cooper's mission to, I want to get back to my children. I want to get back to me. I want to get back to my life. I'm not in this for anybody but me and my children. That's why I'm there. And if I have to go down there, every hour I'm down there, I'm staying younger. My daughter's getting older. But they go down and they find out the planet is uninhabitable. It's covered in water. This is the planet with the water. And someone mentioned that this is the midpoint. And the midpoint, this is at the very end of this tier 1. When they get back is really where the midpoint takes place. So the midpoint is right on the heels of that. So now they've journeyed to the first planet. They've got this first failure. Remember, midpoint, failure, success. This is a big failure for the group. And one of the reasons they were misled was because the explorer who went in front of them had gone down there and was sending back data that they thought was good. The reason they thought that was good because on that planet they were aging 7 years for every 1 year that explorer was on there. That explorer had only been on that planet for a few hours in her time. In mankind on Earth's time, it was many, many, many years. So they thought, oh, this is the planet we should go to. And of course, they were misled by that, missing that key point. But 23 years have passed. So that was kind of a cool way to show it, is that the other astronaut who waited for them was much older. So it's this failure of the mission, of their mission, of what Cooper's goal. Remember, his plot motivation was to be able to get back to Earth and be back with his daughter. Just took a 23-year hit. It was an hour on screen time. In their lives, it was 2 hours in terms of the real lives of the characters, but on screen time it was 10 minutes. But in Earth time, it was 23 years. A major setback for what? For Cooper's mission, not for their mission. That's very important. Cooper's plot motivation. I want to get back to my daughter. There's a major failure for that. And the other characters know that, and they know that this is a pretty big part of a big problem for what Cooper wants to do. So because they were on the planets too long, now they can't. Okay, so now another part of the failure, the bigger part of the failure for their actual mission of what they're trying to do is because they were on the planet's surface too long, they can't make it to both remaining planets. They have to choose one. So, Dr. Brand. Now we're going to start setting up the theme, and we're going to set up tier 2 of the movie, and we're going to answer Dr. A's question: why does the movie slow down after this point? Because tier 2 tier 2 of Act 2, got it up here. Tier 2 of Act 2 is always slows down, and it's about the theme. So we set that up with this argument. Dr. Brand argues she wants to go to Edmund's planet, right? But Cooper brings out that she is in love with the astronaut who went there, and that her judgment might be wrong. Right? And she, at this point, is arguing, hey, love is a guiding principle. We've got all these principles of science, and Cooper argues science at this point. Cooper, she's arguing love, and Cooper's arguing science, which is, by the way, the same thing he argued to his daughter at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, his daughter said, there's something going on with this. I can feel it. I sense it. The ghost is trying to communicate with me. He says, let's look at this scientifically. Let's understand this scientifically, right? And of course, they vote to go to Dr. Mann's planet instead, even though that doesn't seem like the right planet. By the data that they have, the knowledge they have, they believe Edmund's planet should be the right one to go to. But Dr. Mann's planet actually represents a better option for Cooper to potentially be able to return to Earth. He's still on his own personal mission there. But notice that Dr. Brand here, setting up that we're going to be all about the theme, is arguing for love and her own personal desire, her own personal goal in a way. If we were to say what's her personal goal, she wants to see Edmund because she loves him, even though it's been years and he's probably dead and all of that. She still would like to go and pursue that. So even though she's all about this mission, Plan B, we can save the human race, when it comes down to it, she's all about what she personally wants to do. Moving forward to tier 2, and let's go through this kind of quickly. So at home now Now we start to see what's going on back on Earth in much more detail. So at home, the crops are dying. We see Murph and her brother together the first time since the father left, and the brothers they're very sick. Dr. Bram is making clear that Cooper will have to make a choice. Dr. Bram makes it clear that Cooper will have to make. Okay, this is Dr. Bram and Cooper talking on the spaceship, that if it turns out Dr. Mann's planet is the wrong planet, that he's going to then have a choice, because either they have to go back to Earth and die, or they're going to have to go forward and do Plan B to Edmund's planet. That'd be the last hope for mankind. At this point, Professor Brand admits that he can't solve the problem for Plan A, that it's unsolvable unless they get information from inside the black hole. But he dies before revealing that whether or not Murph's father knew about this. And Murph's character, if you've seen the movie, becomes a much more of a significant character. Now her older self is a much bigger character from this point in the movie forward. Okay, so someone's corrected me that that Mann's planet had the better data, but that's why they chose Dr. Mann's planet instead. So, correction, I stand corrected. Anyway, they ultimately travel to Dr. Mann's planet, which had the better data. Oops, scroll over here. Okay, so they ultimately wake up Dr. Mann. He's happy to see them. At this point, with this stuff going on Earth, and they decide they're gonna. Dr. Mann basically explains this is the perfect planet. When we get down to the surface, everything's gonna be okay, but it's all BS. That's what we're gonna find out, that it's all. He was faking the data simply so they would come and get him. And this is the scene where. The Dr. Mann and Cooper are sort of out on their own, and he's like, you don't realize what it's like to be alone, to not have human compassion. You see, that's the theme, right? Isn't that the theme? Dr. Mann, who is all about we need to save the human race, and we're going to send 12 people, and these are going to be brave people who will die on the planet. Only one has the potential to be saved, or two maybe, and he's the one, the leader of the mission, who ultimately caves and says, I'm willing to forego the whole mission, forego the potential to save the human race to force people to come get me by faking the data, even though the data doesn't make sense. I remember there's something with the data not making sense. But, okay, anyway. So, and of course they're intercutting with Murph at home, those themes about her brother and herself, and that's all theme stuff going on there, and that's why, in answer to your question, Dr. A, why we do that, because the theme rises to the surface in the tier 2 of Act 2, and it happens to every movie. Every movie we dissect, it's always the same. It's always, this is about the theme. This is about the personal goal. All the stories, we dig into the depth of those, and that's where your character arc comes out of. This whole part of the movie is where the character arc really comes up to the surface, boils over all that underlying stuff, that deep stuff the movie's about. So moving to the end of Tier 2, of course, there's the whole scene where Dr. Mann is unable to dock and causes an explosion, and then Cooper basically has no choice. And there's an interesting line of dialogue, I didn't write it here, that he says Cooper has to, the robot, Tars, I think the name of the robot is, says, what are you doing? Save the fuel. And he's like, no, we need to dock. And Tars is like, that's not possible. He said, it doesn't matter if it's possible. We need to do possible or not. It's required. In other words, death is certain if they don't do it. So it's like it's irrelevant whether it's possible or not. Right now, what's required is for us to dock, and that's very interesting because, in fact, isn't that what he ultimately does in the plot point 2 when they now are going to use the. They're going to have to get to Edmund's planet. They're going to have to institute Plan B, all now required. There's no going back to Earth now. There's no saving Murph now. There's no saving everybody on the planet now. Now it's about Plan B, saving the human race, right? It's about what's required now, not about what he wants anymore. And they're going to go around shoot around the black hole. And what Dr. Mann doesn't say is that he also has to, like, there's too much weight. One of the spaceships, the one he's in, is I have to stay behind in the black hole also because it's required. So let's jump to Act 3. I'm going to keep going only because, I mean, if someone wants to jump on, you can reach out to Sean, but I do want to kind of get through this, and because I know we're running long already. We're almost at an hour and a half, and I was hoping to do this in an hour. Although I didn't know. I thought we'd just have fun with this. So climax. So as they fly around the black hole, they're going to lose 50 years of their life, by the way, just doing that. So right, Cooper's whole mission, this whole thing of going around the black hole, everything is gone. Like everything he wanted to do, this is the exact opposite of what his original plan for this mission was. Like exact opposite, but he understands there's no other way. This is what's required now. It's doing what's required. And I think and I didn't really bring that out in the theme, but that's part of the theme. It's not about what you want to do. It's about what you need to do. And if you go back to the scene in the school, right? Denying the Apollo mission is not about whether you want to believe it or not. Irrelevant, totally irrelevant when they went to the moon. No, we're not even going to play around with space exploration. But we need farmers. It's what's required. So you see how the theme really becomes a part of now the ending. That whole thing, everything that this character stood for about his personal, goal of individualism has now been smashed. This is about what's required by society. So when we intercut with the older Murph back in her bedroom, so now we're starting to really get into that bedroom again, into the message from the ghost. And of course, Cooper ends up in what was it called, Howard? The Tesseract? I don't remember. It was then I said the complex array in my notes.
Tesseract.
Yeah.
The cube within cube.
And of course now we see the whole thing where he's trying to communicate with his daughter. Right? First she's like to tell him to stay, and then ultimately he says, we already discussed this a little while ago, and ultimately he gives the information that's required. He's able to ultimately Murph realizes that's actually her father. That is the ghost all along. And then the climax ultimately continues. Murph is able to solve the problem based on the information that her father gives her. And let's see if I want jumps like that. Right, let's change that. Let's zoom in a little more. Murph solves the problem. And Cooper, of course, he's ejected from the black hole, paced back in the wormhole. And we get that scene where he touches Dr. Brand as the spaceship passes it. And then the resolution is Cooper is picked up and wakes up in the hospital in space. Now they're in outer space in some kind of weird spaceship. He sees his daughter, who's now an older woman, and then he ultimately leaves to join Dr. Bram on Edmund's planet. See, it's about the future for himself. Now it's about sort of like the mission's accomplished. Let me fulfill my own desires again. Let me just go through triangulation again, because triangulation just work perfectly. Again, this is because we're in the control writer software. We don't have the plot control version of this software just yet. I just put in, so the going through triangulation is not set up as a triangle. We will have that set up when we get to plot control. So we can see the primary situation. The first question in the triangulation of plot control is describe how the primary situation. I'm reading off of plot control. The main software. Describe how the primary situation impacts the main character's personal goal and their ability to pursue it. So Cooper is all about survival of the self, but the mission requires him to focus on the survival of the race as a whole. In other words, it takes him out of that core individuality component of the main character. The primary situation does. Then we have the plot motivation, which is how that impacts the character and on a thematic level. The Cooper is torn about going on the mission because he will not be able to train his children to be individual survivors. As I was kind of trying to come up with, he wants to be with his children. He wants to be there for them. He doesn't necessarily want to go and do this thing for the whole world, but he's forced to. And by going on the mission, ultimately, this is describe how the primary obstacle turns the story in a direction that is going to significantly impact the main character's personal goal, right? So by going on the mission, he really fully relinquishes his own ability to train and teach his own children. That's a part of what's underlying the character. The personal goal, ultimately, which is describing the main character is influenced by the story and how it impacts their personal goal, which is Cooper is given his own personal goal over to fate, which is something goes against his being. He wants to be in control, and And now he's sort of, by doing this, he's sort of like at the will of the overall overriding movie and what's going to transpire in space. And then, of course, as the story transpires, it becomes clear that Cooper will not have any chance to return to Earth and to his own children. And ultimately, Cooper has to decide to sacrifice his own life so that Brand can move forward and complete Plan B. But in doing so, he unlocks the very key to succeeding with Plan A. And let me just read the stuff for that, because it's important. Because finally, with this part of the triangulation, we say describe how the main character, in this case Cooper, and other characters, in this case Brand and the other characters, and Murph, behave differently now that they've changed, or remain steadfast, right, in terms of their personal goal, and how the change influences how that change in their personal goal actually impacts the primary situation. So what's interesting is Coop decides to sacrifice his own life, goes against his nature, goes against what he wants. Coop decides, I'm going to help you do Plan B, goes against his nature, goes against what he wants. And because of that, that's the key thing, because of that, he ends up in the black hole, gets the information he needs to actually achieve the goal of saving the people on Earth. Pretty cool when you really do think about it. Let's I guess move forward to wrap this up. So there you have it. Any questions, comments, queries? Anybody else want to jump in here for any kind of live discussion?
Mitch, just a couple notes, because now that we're here and I see that, as it is, we always are very blessed and grateful for our large international following. So some of you folks are kind enough to be up in the middle of the night, as is Mitch, in fact, overseas. So he is up early in his morning, and many of you are doing the same. So logically, not everyone's able to stay till the end. We have been asked by a few people if there will be a replay. We always, my answer to that is always the same. It's that the intention is to have a replay, but sometimes things go wrong, a technical issue happens, and it doesn't come out the way we hope. So it's always best to be live on the event and participating and just getting that experience of being live. But we also do, by design, try to make replays available, and so that is the case here today. We've also been asked for two different questions. One, is this going to be available for plot control? And also, is this available for Control Writer users? The answer is, for anyone who is not yet a user of Control Writer, and we'll come to that shortly, we will produce an outline, and as we often do, we just tell you, go ahead and send an email to support@realwriting.com, and in the subject line, just put Interstellar outline, please. And we will get you an outline version of this complete breakdown and all the core elements and all the structural timeline points. If you are a Control Writer user, we will actually get you this file so that you can load it right up inside the software.
Right. On that note, what I'd like to do right now is just one of the things. We launched this new version of Control Writer, and you can see how dynamic it is in terms of using the software. I mean, obviously, just a quick. We really haven't talked about Control Writer too much here, but I could have multiple projects within this software. So I could just, add another tab, and I can make a movie 2 here, or a dissection, different dissection, whatever I, wanted to. I got a note coming in. Oh, I should share. I'm being told to share. Okay. So here you can see, while I was not sharing, I added another bubble, but I could just add multiple tabs. Very powerful piece of software. And we're working, the plan is we're going to be having version 3 of Control Writer, of plot control, which is going to work inside of Control Writer when we're done. And what's going to be really cool about this software is, like, you can see this little pencil. So you'll be able to click on any of these pencil marks and actually write your screenplay. So you click on one of these pencils. Here's the outline on the right-hand side. You can flip it if you want it the other way. And it's the outline, and over here I'll write my screenplay. Right here will be screenplay formatting, right inside the software. And what's cool is if I drag things around in the bubble mode, so this would be fully screenplay compatible, for formatting, And when I drag bubbles around, actually, I would move, if I reorder scenes, I'll be reordering my underlying whole screenplay will be reordered as well. And of course, we've got now the ability to add images, to attach additional files. You can capture audio. You can do screenshots. Right, there I am now. And hold on, I got another note here. So what we're going to do is we'd like to make an offer that we made to everybody in the real writing community a few months ago, which is we're going to give you an opportunity to become a user of this software, Control Writer. Right now we do sell it for $99 a year to become a subscriber. We're going to give our members of the real writing community an opportunity to actually get access to the software for $47, and we're going to give you an offer right now while we're on this call. We'll take questions about the software. And on top of that, if you subscribe to the software Control Writer through the special link we're going to provide, we're going to give you a free copy of Plot Control 3.0 when it comes out. So your software, when 3.0 comes out, which will be, you would need, it's basically used Plot Control 3.0. Let me just put myself on screen. So basically, to use Plot Control 3.0, you're going to need to be a subscriber of Control Writer, and then like a premium template within that software, you're going to need you need to buy Plot Control for maybe $97, whatever. We don't have the prices yet. I'm just throwing numbers out there. There'll be an extra cost. Maybe it won't be that much to become a Plot Control user. So what we're going to do right now is give you a really special price, $47. I think it's $47 a year. You'll be locked in, and you're going to get Plot Control 3.0 and all the updates of Plot Control 3.0 when it comes out, which it's on our timeline to work on it within the next 2 or 3. We're hoping to be done with it by now, but realistically, we've got a group of programmers. We now have 4 programmers working on Control Writer software. We're bringing on a 5th quality assurance tester into the team. And I'm overseas actually working on that, working with those people. So we're really excited about where this software is going to go with everything with Control Writer. We believe it's going to become...
One of those people reached out to me right in the middle of this webinar, and I had to tell him that I can't talk right now. I'm right in the middle of a live broadcast.
Yeah. So the vision for Control Writer goes well beyond how it applies in the screenwriting space, but as a personal passion to myself, to Sean, and to Howard, we really want to see a tremendously valuable tool for the film community come out of the software Control Writer. We know how powerful a tool it's been for story building, and we believe it can be twice as valuable a tool for not only story building but story writing. For collaboration yeah, Sean, you can jump in. I just got a note here. But for collaboration feature, the collaboration feature is going to be amazing. You'll be able to share your copy of, for instance, let's just say Interstellar I'm working on Interstellar, and you guys saw the layout, and you can get into the screenwriting when we have that mode. What's going to be able to happen, you'll be able to share it with another user and actively be working. So me and Howard are working on a project. I can share my Control Writer project, Interstellar, with Howard, and we could both be literally working at the same time in the same project, live. So I'm working on this scene, and Howard's working on that scene, and it's changing. What he's doing is changing on my screen. It's going to be really awesome. When we're in development of that component for Control Writer right now, and then after that, when we're done with that, we're going to focus on the screenwriting part of it for Plot Control 3.0. Sean wanted to jump.
And I promise everyone that the purpose here was not to go into a long software demonstration and everything else. If you go to the Control Writer website, there's a lot of ways that you can take advantage of it, including even as a basic user in a light version, although the offer that Mitch is referring to for the real writing community, all those additional components are not part of that. But if you just want to learn more about the software itself, part of what we were getting quite a bit is that what would happen is people would say, I love Plot Control. It's just that, I also use this, or I want to work on a 4-act film, or I want to work on a television series, and I'd like to be able to add multiple acts. And so part of what the framework is for Control Writer is we were able to open up the architecture of the software so that you can have the very best of the plot control framework, but also if you need to add additional acts or you want to add additional components, you're free to do that because the software gives you that total flexibility. And as far as what Mitch was talking about with the collaboration tools and all of those other things, these are all things that are really coming down the pipe, and there is quite a lot of work here. It's a major project for us. It's our strongest initiative, and the real writing community stands to benefit greatly from the experience of working inside that software. But in the interim, just in case it wasn't clear, Plot Control 3.0 is going to be available to Control Writer users in our real writing community on this offer once it's released. However, in the interim, the software that Mitch was using was Plot Control 2.0. It was the framework of Plot Control. However, it was also enhanced because there are additional software features in Control Writer that you can use here. So, for example, the ability to have multiple projects, the ability to actually be able to drag and drop all of your notes and your subnotes, the ability to actually drag notes not just from one area to the other, but actually drag notes and subnotes from one act to another. So you have a much greater freedom of movement, and of course you can attach files and different references of any kind. You can have audio notes, different files, different attachments, different references from the web, all of those kinds of things. So Mitch, I don't know if you popped this thing in yet.
I did. I just put in a link that people can. Those who are interested, certainly we invite you, and we encourage you to take advantage of this offer. We think it's a great offer, and the power of this software is that, look, if you're not convinced yet, you're not convinced that Real Writing, my framework is great, you can set up your own framework in this software. I mean, it's completely customizable from that point of view. So you could set up your own timeline, use another to save the cat timeline for those of you who like that. We know we get those requests in the past for people who want to be able to take the save the cat timeline and put it in our software. Well, now you can with Control Writer, because Control Writer as a foundational piece of software is very expandable to any kind of field where this kind of structurized brainstorming tool that kind of incorporates all the different parts of a project into one place. But specifically in this case, obviously will provide you with not only Interstellar, the great price, the Plot Control 3.0 when it comes out, but I'm going to give you a downloadable pre-configured. Let me just open it on my computer actually. Just demonstrate what you'll get. Let me just do that right now.
And by the way, the different frameworks, folks, can be it can all be in one project. So you literally have one of your tabs that has the plot control framework. If you use other things or other references for your story breakdowns, it can be the same project just on a different tab. The structure is set up in the software that way. But Mitch, which one are you going to show them, the example or the actual? Oh, there you go. Okay. There you go.
This is the So this is the actual pre-configured plot control framework that will provide for you that you can load into your Control Writer software. So it's got built-in 5 projects that break everything down from Plot Control 2.0, as you're familiar with. It's got the start here questions, I think the 13 questions, all right in there. It's got the triangulation. Again, it's framed around. We don't have the actual plot control. When we get the Plot Control 3.0 and we actually make it, there'll actually be a triangulation the way you're used to seeing it. But because we don't have that set up yet, I just put in the 6 questions, and here the actual, I didn't have them in the version I was using, so I had to read them out loud. But the actual questions themselves are here. The core elements, of course. And there's a way to add the grid. We'll give you that secret tip on adding your own grid. Right, because by default you can't add a grid, and of course the timeline, the 3 acts are just kind of all set up in a row. I'm not sure if and having done it now with Interstellar, and having had the 3 acts separate, I kind of maybe like that better. But here they are, all 3 acts: opening scene, setup, inciting incident, and you of course can add more. So if you want to do the way I did it, so you can just add something like this and add more setup columns. Instead of going long down, you can just go long sideways, the way I did it with Interstellar. And then you've got 5 built-in projects, We've got the help info built right in here that addresses all the different things. So I want to get a clarification on something with the setup part of it. Here I go to timeline help, and here's some clarification on the setup or any of the parts of the story. So this project will be provided to you instantly upon purchase that you can download, and I'll give you instructions. I've got a pre-recorded video there all set up. You download this and just follow the instructions. You can load it into your own copy, own version of Control Writer and start working in this. And of course, when Plot Control 3.0 comes out, you'll have that as well. So.
Right. By the way, some of you I noticed participated. Some might have seen it, but I just for fun, I threw out a quick poll question out to the group and asked, on the whole, did you think Interstellar was a work of genius or a near miss? And the final results of the poll were 65% of you thought it was a work of genius, 35% thought it was a near miss. So.
All right, there you go. So
people in favor of the continued brilliance of Christopher Nolan.
And look, I mean, you know, I think that's enough on the. We'll leave the offer up. We didn't want to make this about pitching the software. We just really wanted to give everybody an opportunity to take advantage of the software, because when Plot Control 3.0 comes out, we're going to be pushing it pretty hard, and at that point, you're probably going to have to, buy. Probably a discounted version of Control Writer, but you're also going to have to buy Plot Control 3.0, whatever it is. Certainly we're going to be putting it out there for you to purchase and making it clear that we're making that offer. But right now, you get an opportunity to jump in there at a very good price. You're not going to get a better price. No matter what we sell it for later to the community, it's not going to be less than this.
Correct.
So
just a couple of quick questions, because some of them are specifically related to practical. Will it work on Mac? Yes. This version of the software is actually a cloud version of the software, so you can access it anytime, anywhere. And so you will be able to get that online anytime. The local machine version of this software is also coming very soon. We get asked all the time, including today, will this be iPad friendly and available on that? Currently, even this current version you technically can use on the iPad. There are certain things like dragging the bubbles which you cannot. So I do not say that it's officially fully operational on iPad or mobile, but you can certainly do read-only mode and read all your reports and whatever you're writing. And you can also, in your document editor mode, actually edit and still be functional on an iPad or other tablet device.
But one thing that's very cool is we already have our UI our user experience called user experience guy do the whole layout for how the tablets and phones are going to work, and it's really awesome.
That's right. It's really cool. So
it's really cool.
Yes, to the iPad question, it is definitely right around the corner, and it is all coming. But we also know that we've had a lot of requests just for a lot of our software to be able to access it from any time and anywhere, not just on one or number of machines, but wherever they are, to be able to have that access. And so that's what this is about. However, we also respect those who, as the quirky writers that some of us can be, really just prefer to keep everything private on their own machine. And so just know that even this online version of the software, you always have the ability to back up your work locally on your own machine. It does not need to remain on the cloud only. And of course, in the future release version, you will also get access to be able to install the software directly on your machine and only work on your machine, if that's your preference.
I've got a what I would call a beta version that I can use on my local machine, but it was just taking longer than we thought. We in conversations about what's the more valuable component for the end users. The team of programmers can only really do so much at once, and we decided to do certain things with the the overall look of the software first, and we wanted
collaboration.
And the collaboration. Right now, our focus has been on keeping our programmers on the collaboration function, and they're telling us 2 to 3 weeks that it'll be done. So that means to us at least 4 to 6 weeks.
Two or three times that.
Right. But we keep saying, we're like, because we've learned now, we're learning how to make software. Like, okay, do you mean 2 to 3 weeks, or do you mean 2 to 3 months? And because when the whole thing with the local machine app was sort of like, no, we're doing 2 to 3 weeks, and then 2 to 3 weeks went by. Okay, how much longer? Another 2 to 3 weeks. Another 2 to 3 weeks by. And then it's like, how much longer? Another 2 to 3 weeks. And it was like, literally, there were times like, we need 2 more days. And 2 more days, and we were still, but I actually have a working version on here. I could pull it up and show, but the point is that we working the local versions definitely can be done. The apps, the phone, it's all going to be done. It's going to take some time. Over the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to get a lot done. Plot control is certainly going to get done. I mean, that's just a personal a personal project that we're going to make happen no matter what. But
Yep. But just in general, folks, what's most important for us and for our community is that, we do these webinars, we do other trainings. For those of you, some of you who are here have been with us now for a number of years, and so you know what we try to do on a regular basis. And it's the reason if you go to the Control Writer website, you'll see that we added a basic free user model, because we want you to have access to be able to use these things. It's not all about there are many people who, for any number of reasons, just either don't want another piece of paid software, or they choose at any particular time to not take advantage. And so we want you to have the power of the tools, and we also just want to make you aware of the things that are there. Should you choose to go deeper and have additional resources at your disposal, we just make those available as part of it. But on the whole project behind the Control Writer software is to have a very large user base that's able to really take advantage of this technology in their writing, not just in their screenwriting, but any kind of writing that you do. As Mitch, I think, said earlier, this goes well beyond the screenwriter marketplace. It's really for, Mitch and I literally have it open all day long, and that's what we work in. It is our primary workspace. So
that's a good point. Yeah, it's like I'm at the point now where, like, if I've gotten a whole just one project that's just ideas. Like, and it's ideas for movies, it's ideas for other things, ideas for this would be a cool business, this would be a cool invention, just like, and then I can notate things and I can organize them by category, and that's just one project. I've got a project of my screenplays. Me and Howard will jump on, and we did this with Plot Control 2.0, but now we jump on, and we're really excited about the collaboration. We'll jump on. Me and Howard, when we have an idea, this is more about Plot Control than even about Control Writer, we jump on, like, I have an idea, and we're like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. We jump into Plot Control, and the first thing we do is we start breaking it down. And we'll spend like an hour, 2 hours. Then we're like, let's look back. Nah, it's like, nah, that's not a good idea. You just start to think about it. You start to, this is going to be too complicated, it's going to be too complex, it's going to be too much research on our part. But the software just lets us express that, like, initial, like, oh, you got this great idea for a movie, and then sort of get that energy out, and then look at it and be like, yeah, maybe it's not such a great idea. It's not as funny as we thought, not as action-oriented as we thought, too expensive, there's no way we can make it, we can't get access out, and all the different objections, but it lets us think about it, lets us express it and think about it. We do that quite a bit with the software. We've had some ideas that we're like, yeah, maybe we should do this one. Maybe we should, put this one on the burner somewhere.
So before we close things up, Mitch, is there anybody in our I don't want to say skeleton crew, because we still have nearly 50 people in the webinar out of our original registration, which is great. We're thrilled to have you. Anyone want to have some fun? As you can see, Chris and Dennis got on and spoke with us. We would love to talk with you. Love to spend a few minutes. Does anybody have any pressing questions about a screenplay or a project that they're working on? Or now, if anybody wanted another refresher on any specific question related to the core elements or anything else, happy to do that now. But other than that, I'm gonna call this a last call for questions and group participation. There's no pressure, but that said, if we don't hear from anybody in the next, I'll wait an extra 30 seconds to a minute because of that delay we alluded to. So you'll hear me ask this question probably in another 10 or 15 seconds. But after that, if we don't see any additional questions or requests to join the call, we will wish everybody good night. But Mitch.
Yeah, so I don't know how, yeah, so that's great. I was just going to comment, what I'm going to do with this timer, because we've got this this offer timer, I don't know what happens after we end the broadcast. If it stays up there, I'm going to just put like 30 extra minutes on it. So even after we end, if people want to think about it, check out the software, you can do a trial on the website, controlwriter.com. You can go check it out, and if you decide you want it, we'll have the offer up there. I'll just put another hour on it, just leave it open, and you can have access to the offer. So let me just remove it, and then just put it back up there with like an hour. So I don't know. For all I know, as soon as we close this, it will disappear off your screen, in which case just reach out to support for the link. But we'll just leave this up there for another hour so you guys can ponder that. And like I said, I really wanted this to be about Interstellar and about thinking about plot control and real writing, but I'm okay trying to offer out there something that I think would be very valuable for the community as well. So that's it for that. We'll leave that offer up for another hour. And like I said, when we close this out, no idea what's going to happen. But anybody want to jump on here, talk about their own films, spend a few minutes doing that. I only have the energy for maybe one, but if you want, now's the time.
That's right.
And otherwise, 1 minute from now, we're going to shut this down, and so I'll just start saying thank you for everyone who attended. We had, in the end, I think over 180 registrations. Probably about half of those, little less than half, show up. So about 80 some odd people at one point during the webinar. There'll be a replay of this if you want to watch it again. You can just click on the link, and we'll have an email with the replay link out there sometime tomorrow during the day. We'll have one more email pestering you. If obviously you participated, so you can ignore those emails. We're going to be pestering all those people who didn't show up. They registered. We still had 100 or so people, almost 100 people who registered, didn't show up. So we're going to give them an opportunity to see it. So we'll get an email out there. But I thank everyone who did participate, all of you specifically who stayed to the end, and all the people who participated and jumped in. Steve and it was Chris and
Chris and Dennis.
Chris and Dennis, thank you so much for.
Chris and Richard was trying, but he had. I tried to invite him. There just must be some technical issues on his end, but maybe next time. Sometimes and guys, we appreciate all your patience. Sometimes those technical issues come up. As you can imagine, there's a limit to how much we could really troubleshoot, on this type of an event. But I know that I've had some own quirks with my own machine, especially if some of you folks are Mac users. There's been some real quirks with Google Hangouts and Mac settings. So you may just want to really just update your Flash and check and make sure that even though this is broadcasting differently, I've noticed some relationship between Flash and what your system settings are, what microphone, what camera, and also what happens is when you're actually asked to join and be a presenter, if you haven't already given your machine permanent permission on Google Hangouts, you'll see, most of you, a little camera icon in the right corner of your address bar, and that camera is where you actually allow yourself to be included or not. That's one of the places you'll see settings. On Windows machines, I think it's a little bit different, but the point is, be on the lookout for that kind of a message that pops up. And Pablo is asking about could you do a Blade Runner breakdown in the future? I was just going to remind everybody that we love to hear from people, and we want to hear your suggestions on what type of movies you want us to break down, your dissections. And if any of you are brave enough, we also encourage you to submit a breakdown of your own, because if it's really, really close, we would love to feature it on future trainings and future webinars and allow you to talk about it and break it down. So
there you go, Pablo. You got the job.
Well, he's Blade Runner.
Right, Blade Runner, right, yeah.
It's out
for tomorrow, I'm going to give you 12 hours.
We do have Dr. A, forgive me for calling you out, but you're saying not able to buy mechanically. Are you saying that the links or something with the system is not allowing you to get where it needs to go? Because if that's the case, we can check on that on our end.
No, I click on it. Why don't we just have them reach out to support, and we'll just do it.
Yeah, if you're interested. So Dr. A, if you're still there, just email support at realwriting.com, and we'll get you the necessary links. Sorry you're having those difficulties.
So with that note, one final thank you, and we'll sign off. Howard, did you have anything final to say? You're pretty quiet today, but nope. Right, he's coming on.
Yeah, no, I could go on about some of my beeps about some other issues with the movie, but I think we covered it pretty well. I want to know where the beer came from.
Well, yeah, you told me. What was the beer thing? You were like,
there's no more wheat. It's only corn, so he's drinking beer.
But how do you know it's beer? It's just drinking something.
It's in a beer bottle. Okay, it's corn beer.
Corn beer? Okay, so there you go. It's distilled corn.
Second thing.
GMO corn beer.
It took like 4 stages of rockets to get out of the Earth's atmosphere.
You told me this.
Getting off that first planet with just the water, they just fire and they're out of there. No problem.
It's the future, guys. It's the future.
But I think this comes back to the logic conversation we had before. I mean, these are very. I guarantee everybody who's still listening and still paying attention are like, "Well, I don't remember that," but you're 100% right. The visual impact of those rockets taking off, at the, leaving Earth, but they really don't even need that kind of technology. As we see later, they can just blast off and go up. They don't need to, and on by the way, a planet that has gravity that's even more than Earth's. So, look, these are legitimate things, but it just shows, look, at the end of the day, I don't even know what the budget, Inception was a $160 million budget. This is probably what, I don't know what the budget was. Hundreds of millions of dollars spent on this movie.
180 or something, right, Howard? Maybe more.
But,
But
I'll give them credit. They visualized the black hole and all those the visuals going through space were amazing. And that stuff's hard to do.
And the other thing, Howard, is like, look, for all you guys, because remember, at the end of the day, we get into this community and we talk very hard about, the structure and the story breakdown, and it's important that we help our community of writers to understand those facets. But let's not forget that there's also the comprehensive movie experience. And I will say to anyone out there that did not have the blessing of seeing this in IMAX, it's a totally different experience to rent this on Amazon and DVD for whatever it's worth, and to sit in the theater and just be absolutely immersed in a huge screen with incredible sound, and that coupled with the genius of the story breakdown and everything else. So,
and you guys didn't know. I didn't tell you about that whole thing with getting the refund, did I? The Amazon. That's a true story. Yeah. True story. The whole thing's true. That really happened.
You led with it, but.
Right.
But that said, it's, and I think I remember it was. Forgive me because I don't remember who it was that made the comment about that whole emotional logic thing. And all I know is it was extremely emotional. I remember having. I don't know if any of you out there saw the movie Contact way back when with Jodie Foster, and I just remember watching that movie and having such an emotional reaction. It was just there were parts of it that were really so powerful, and just so incredibly, moving about the storyline and what it really meant in a universal sense. And I had a very similar experience just watching this movie in the theater. I mean, once I was able to go afterwards and really start to analyze it as Mitch does and as we break it down, it really didn't detract from my enjoyment of movies. And interestingly enough, we do have some in our community, and people ask me all the time, and they come to people like Mitch and Howard in the industry, and they say, the fact that you guys are always studying movies and looking at it this closely, does it ever just kind of ruin your position as a movie fan, as a moviegoer? And my answer to that is always it's actually just the opposite. Because this type of deeper understanding, this type of understanding really how the building blocks work and how stories are put together makes the movie-going experience even more powerful, because you understand and you can appreciate even more just what goes into bringing forth a movie like this on screen.
Right. I think Matthew McConaughey was also in Contact. He played the priest, right? And that was much more overt, right? It was much more overt.
Palmer Joss, he was.
Right,
Yes.
I mean, and that was a much more overt, thematic play in terms of the movie maker.
He hasn't looked the same since he did Dallas Buyers Club. He still hasn't recovered. People who lose that much weight for a role never seem to recover entirely.
All right. Except for De Niro, he's the only one I've seen that can repeatedly go back and forth.
Listen, morning where Lex is. So it's.
Anyway, we're getting a little punchy here on our end, folks, so I will one more time ask if there's any. I'll just check in the list real quick, Mitch, see if I see anything. Missed so much dog, I didn't know what was happening. At some time, wish it had a cap. Scored by the film. Okay, so just promise. Okay to go. Want an Amazon refund for all the times when dial-up. Yeah, that is something you could deal with Amazon. They'll probably hook you up on that. Christopher.
Yeah, that whole thing was automatic. Look, I made no complaints to Amazon. I had no issues with anything watching. It's just their system must interpreted my constantly watching little bits and pieces when I was doing the dissection as playback issues, and therefore they automatically gave me a refund. But, it's just a funny story. I thought it'd be a funny story to open on. That was really the.
Yep.
Because I was thinking about that, like, how am I gonna, look, when I'm about to sit in front of, hopefully hundreds of people doing the webinar, you got to think about, like, what are you gonna say? How are you gonna open it, and, and just that was sort of like, that'd be a fun story because it's about literally my doing the very dissection for.
How do you enjoy a movie stopping and starting it 94 times in 2 hours and 40 minutes?
No,
Yeah.
no, listen, I finished the dissection. I was like I was watching the timer on because you have the movie for 2 days or 2.5 days. So after I'd watched the first, and literally, it took me all day to watch the movie. I was hiding from my wife's Kim. I was hiding from her. She's like, "What are you doing in there?" I'm like, "No, it's stuff. I'm working on important." I was like, she had no idea. Eventually, she found out. Then she finds out, you've been watching the movie. She's like. And I thought she'd be upset. I was watching. She's like, I thought we were going to watch it together.
Yes.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
So I was
webinar just to justify.
So then I was like, no, you'll hate this movie. It's all science. And actually, she was like, oh, it's science. Yeah, forget that. I don't want to see that. So,
well, guys,
all right.
Thank you all once again. I'll let Mitch close us out with last words. But yes,
That's it. I'm done with my last words. Thank you again, everybody.
There will be a replay for people who are asking. We'll mail it out, and shouldn't be as early tomorrow morning. You're free to check this out as often as you like. Again, feel free to check out the Control Writer website. If right now this particular real writing framework isn't for you, by all means, come join our community as a free user. We'd love to have you on board, and we'd love your feedback on future features you want to see. And don't hesitate to reach out to support@realwriting.com. Any comments, questions, feedback, anything you'd like to share, we're so grateful for you being here. We'd love to have you, and we can't wait to see you again on the next webinar. All the best, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.